Welcome to Grief Chats with Dana and Mira, where we talk candidly about all things grief and widowhood. Grief is hard. Let's talk about it.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Welcome to episode 5, of Grief Chats. This episode we're going to do kind of a continuation of our last one, which was on sex and dating and grief. And we are going to just do a full episode of Q&A. So you guys sent a lot of questions into us, and we're going to just kind of rapid fire, try and get through as many as possible. We'll just jump on into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the first question.
Okay.
Okay. When is the right time to date / have sex / be in a relationship after the death of your person?
There is no right time. And like, even if you go back and listen to the episode 4, when we talk about like our timelines and how it all unfolded for each of us, it's so different even between the two of us in terms of like when all of these different things take place. And honestly, like there truly is no right and no wrong. I think it's completely unique and based on like who you are, your sexual identity, what kind of relationship you had with your person, who you like, just dumb luck, like who you happen to meet, what your grief looks like. You know, all of those things are going to be so unique. So I think that there is like no right time at all.
Yeah, I think when it feels right, it's right.
Question 2. How do you love your late partner and move on with someone new? Is it okay to date someone new if you're still thinking about your late partner?
Oh gosh. I mean, yes, I'm always thinking about Brad. So I feel like there's never not going to be a time where I'm not thinking about Brad. So I just think if you're waiting for yourself to stop loving that person, you'll never move on. You'll never find someone new. It always exists. I think the key is to try and figure out how to love your late partner and somebody else, and that is different for everyone and what that looks like, what that feels like, the timing for that. But I think you have to figure out how to do both.
Yeah. Duality, like we said last episode, it's all about duality, about duality. And like, I don't know. Honestly, like this is, that's why I was like, Dana, you have to answer this question. Planning the episode because I'm like, I don't know. Like, how do you do that? I don't know how you do that.
Trial and error.
I think it's like a really, really, really hard skill to learn that we must learn as widows. I think want to get into another relationship.
Right. If being in a partnership is important to you and that's what you want, you have to figure out how to carry both of those. And some of these other questions we'll get into more details with that. But yeah, you have to figure it out for yourself if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. Mira, did you take your wedding ring off when you started dating, or when did you take it off?
Okay. So with my ring, so my ring doesn't look like a traditional, like obvious wedding ring. I feel like that would make a really big difference. Like if you have a ring with like a huge diamond on it, it's like, that's clearly, you know, an engagement ring. Maybe that's different, but mine is like, I'm wearing it right now. It's like a band and it has like Canadian diamonds and sapphires like on the outside, but it's flat. So it doesn't like, it's really, really beautiful and like perfect for me, but it's not like this signals to somebody like she's married, but I did move it. So I moved it from my left ring to my left ring to my right hand. Okay. I just like love it so much, but I did take it off at certain points. So I wouldn't say it was like correlated with dating specifically. But there was a few periods of time when I've taken it off like intentionally to experience not wearing it and to like connect to different parts of myself. But I've been wearing it for a while now on my right hand. I also moved it to like my middle finger for a while. But I've been wearing it for a while now, like for at least the full past year, I'd say, and just haven't really like wanted to take it off. I took it off before I started dating, for a couple of reasons. So one, I was on this cross-country road trip and I was by myself and people would see the ring and ask me, and it was really difficult to like having strangers be like, where is your husband? What, seeing a wedding ring and being by myself on this solo trip and just being curious.
and feeling like I couldn't escape that. So I started to think about it then, of just this idea of like constantly being asked and having to talk about this loss I had. But I ended up taking it off because I did a backcountry like canoe trek for a week, and I had to wear gloves, and it just, I was gone for a week in the backcountry camping, and so it was just a logistical thing, and I had every intention of putting it back on when I got back, but it was very emotional taking it off for that week, like at the beginning. And at that point I was like, it's been a week, it's been off, like I'm just going to keep it off so I don't have to go through that again. And I also didn't want to be in the position of being like, I'm interested in a person, or I like am now mentally ready to date and having to do it for another person. Like I just like very specifically didn't want that to be my experience.
That makes so much sense. How do you let go of the fear of making a new relationship public?
Oh, I am still working on this. Because I am in a new relationship that is no longer that new and haven't made it public at all.
Except on grief chats you have.
Yeah, so I did last week. I think was the first time that I mentioned this person, not by name and really not in a lot of detail. Very vaguely. Hard. It is hard.
Oh my God, I know.
It's hard. I don't know. I feel like the people that like are in my real life are aware. And beyond that, it's like, I don't know why it's difficult, because everyone is watching. It's the thing I know. People have asked me when I do the Q&As, like for myself, like, am I still dating the other guy? And, there's so many things. We talked about this last time of like, it means another relationship ended. And so now I'm like feeling weird about being a widow. And now I'm feeling weird about like, this other relationship ending, and now it's trying a new relationship. And there's just so many complexities to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you let go of the fear? I think you just at one point you rip off the Band-Aid and, I'm trying to get better of stopping to overthink everything. Like I don't want to think about everyone else's opinion and reaction, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
It's hard though.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
I know why. Okay, so why is it so hard? Because I feel like I also agree that it is really, really, really hard.
I think because there's this fear of like the perception of what it means to be in a new relationship, the misconceptions of you're over your partner.
Yes.
There's all these things. There are all these layers that come with it. It's not like a normal person that's single and then gets a partner and everyone's like, oh, I'm so happy that you found somebody. There's like all these different layers to it that sometimes are all just in my own head and sometimes they're not. But as a classic overthinker, it makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
To put that like on the internet.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, I'm imagining for me, like if and when that happens, that I'm in a relationship and people know, I think I would be really, really worried that people would assume that my grief was over and wouldn't like see me as a griever anymore.
And I think there is truth there. I think, and we talked about it a little bit last time, but like when your people that you love want you to find a new relationship, because then they can be like, oh, you're happy. We don't have to worry about you in the same way. Like people want you to be happy. They want to worry less. And so there's just so many things that come with that.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Hard one.
That is a hard one. Okay, hopefully we'll get some easy ones. This probably isn't one. How do you not feel guilty moving forward with someone new, or not feel like you're cheating on your partner? And if you believe they're watching you, how do you not feel like they are devastated or jealous seeing you with someone else?
Oh my God.
That is a lot. That is not a softball question.
That is not a softball question. Thank you to whoever asked that question.
And this was, a lot of people ask this question, like some combination. So I know a lot of you guys are curious.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I touched upon this last time. I feel like for me, I don't feel a lot of guilt about dating other people, but I do wonder what will happen if and when I'm like in a relationship with someone who I'm really developing like love feelings for, and whether guilt will come up or not, I have no clue. But in terms of like dating and being sexual, I haven't really felt guilty. And I think I just honestly like, I mean, this is going to get a little bit spiritual now for a moment, but I just like very much believe and feel that when a soul enters the spiritual realm and leaves the physical realm, all of those sort of like human emotions and feelings that are caught up in our ego and all of these things like jealousy, just kind of, and like, they just kind of go away. Like, that's just my really strong belief. And so, yeah, of course, Brian wouldn't like to like be sitting there watching me have sex with another guy. Like, obviously, when he was alive, he would not want to be doing that. But I don't think it bothers him now in his spiritual state. I think that he can like see like our lives in such a large spiritual way and like our connection and all these things. I don't think he's like at all bothered by that or cares. I feel like he is like cheering me on in that regard and being like, you're human, you need to experience like physical connection, it's okay. Like, that's my
I love that.
That's my very strong feeling. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's part of the reason I wanted you to answer that, especially for the second part of that question about them watching you, because I know you've talked about that before and just think you have just such a beautiful outlook on that and feeling. So thank you for that.
Okay. So can you both talk about your personal experiences about timing and telling someone you're a widow and how to not make it an awkward encounter?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel awkward saying I'm a widow 100% of the time. Like,
yeah, it's always going to be awkward.
Always awkward. Like, even if it's not dating, like meeting in person, it's awkward.
Yeah.
I don't feel this like pride that certain people do that like I envy a little bit, that are like powerful, like widows, they like own this. I feel uncomfortable because it opens up a can of worms I don't always want to talk about. It almost always makes the other person feel uncomfortable or awkward. And I've just accepted that. Like, when you meet somebody, whether it's dating or not, and you tell them you're a widow, it's going to be awkward. And I think for dating, it's how do they handle it next? Like, expect it's going to be uncomfortable. They're going to feel awkward, but then where does it go from there? You know, and I think that's what you should look out for more than is it awkward? Because it's going to be awkward. And I don't know.
Make it awkward because it's impossible.
Right. And if someone has experiences where it's not, like, I'd be curious about it.
Mm-hmm. When do you tell them? That was the other part of the question.
So I've really only had this experience once where I've had to tell someone, and it was like the very short time I was on a dating app, and we were chatting before we met, and it was just, I think it casually came up of, you know, past relationships or something, and I told him, and he actually responded very well, and then we went on a date, and it was fine, and, you know, it was like, I was very open of like, if you want to talk about it, I'm here, like, responded really well. And the other people I've dated, I either met through friends that knew about Brad and knew my relationship, or, you know, situations where I didn't have to actually drop the widow bomb.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 I was going to say like pretty much same with me exactly. With the brief times that I've been on dating apps or experimented with dating apps, I've always told them, like before we met in person. And same, like they've always kind of responded, well, like the two times that it happened, they both responded well. And then otherwise it was always like friends who knew, or somebody I met like in a grief group. So obviously he knew. Yeah. But yeah.
Did you have it in your dating app profile? I think someone had asked this and I don't think I put it down on this question sheet. But I know a lot of people go back and forth about whether or not to say you're a widow in your profile.
Yeah, so I don't say it in my profile. I mean, I don't have a dating profile up right now, but when I have done it, I do not put it in my profile because I just feel like, I don't know why, for some reason it just doesn't feel right putting it right in my profile. Maybe I just kind of feel like it might either attract the kind of guy who's like has that kind of complex of like saving somebody or being like a kind of a savior type that I'm just not into at all. Yeah, I just kind of, I don't know, but then I always pretty much tell them like right away when we start texting back and forth.
Yeah.
Because I kind of just don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
Listen, if they're going to have some shit response, like it's just not. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I didn't either. Kind of the same reason. I didn't feel like it was necessary to put it out. And I thought about it after. I was like, I kind of like the idea of weeding out anyone that feels weird about it. But I think it's such an important part of my story. I don't want it to just be read and I don't know. I want to be the person that shares that in the backstory and have that experience because it's such a big part of my life. I think having that conversation in some capacity in person or at least in a chat or something, like I think that's important to me.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Okay. Did anyone else question their sexual orientation after being widowed?
Yeah, I'm so glad this one made it in because I feel like it's a question that I've gotten, or like question/comment that I've gotten a lot from people. And I have this theory. I think that it is pretty common. Like, I think it is pretty common for, I mean, I think our sexuality is all, this is me getting into my beliefs on sexuality, but like our sexuality is all pretty fluid and a lot of it is like, you know, how we're raised or like what seems acceptable, combined with like lots of other things. But I think that sometimes after like a big loss or a trauma, like if you were already kind of like somewhat open, even subconsciously, to being more open and fluid with your sexuality, then all of a sudden there's going to be like a huge benefit to maybe experimenting, dating women because it's going to be like this new, it's like the whole thing of grief of like craving something new instead of the same that can be triggering.
Right.
So like, yeah, I've definitely thought about like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I've definitely been like, I wonder if I would prefer to date women because it just seems like it would be this whole kind of new thing that wouldn't have all those like triggers and bombs that dating another man could have. And I think that it's also can happen with women who experience like traumatic separations from men as well. And I have a few friends that have been through those experiences and we talk about this as well. So I think it is pretty common.
Yeah, I also think that not just dating women, but also just experimenting more sexually in any capacity. Like I think I've spoken with several people who, you know, more S&M and just like wanting to kind of take power in the bedroom and maybe they didn't before and just things that maybe are different because it gives them some sense of control in this period of time that they don't have a lot of control. And so I think experimenting in all kinds of different sexual ways makes sense and I think is pretty common as a widow and grieving.
Yeah. Oh, this one. This is a common one. When do you bring up a new relationship to your in-laws or late partners, friends, and family?
For me, it's when I feel like it's a relationship versus a date. Like I think when it has some legs to it, because I want them to know if this is a person that's going to stick around. Like I want my in-laws, I want Brad's family and his friends to know somebody that I'm spending time with, you know? And I think if it's just casual or whatever, it's maybe not that important. But if it's someone I see, even if it's not like the one, if it's someone that's going to be around for a while, I'm going to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I would say too.
Yeah.
Like I haven't really talked to Brian's mom or his family about anyone that I've dated because nobody has been super serious. But I think that is when I would, you know, when it was someone who was like really very much a part of our lives. But I think it will be hard.
Yeah, it was hard. So I've done it twice now. Had 2 relationships and it was hard both times. Second time was someone they knew. So that was a different dynamic. They'd met before and Brad's brother knows. And so that added an extra level of complexity to it. But I don't know why it's so hard. Like, I know I have such a great relationship with Brad's family that I'm like, I know that they want me to find love again and be happy and all of these things. And it still is so hard to tell them.
Yeah.
Like it still is hard.
Yeah. I think it's just hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want like people that are like not in it to be like, it's normal that this will be hard.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean there's not love all around for everyone involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Mira, how do you handle dating with kids? When do you tell them you are dating? When do you introduce them to your new person? And how do you handle sleepovers?
Oh my God.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And I can be of no help.
So also though my kid has been pretty young. So like she was 2 when Brian died and, you know, turned 3 right after he died.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, so I think it's different when you have older kids. Like she was not aware of what like a man hanging out with us meant or anything like that. Like she's just like, oh, cool, you know? So for the majority of them, I haven't like told her at all. She hasn't been, because like it's just been dating.
Yeah.
So she hasn't been, you know, I haven't needed to, like I just tell her I'm going out with a friend or whatever.
Yeah.
And then with one of them who did like become more part of our life, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think I handled it very well. Like, I don't know that I'm like a very good person to answer this question because I didn't really explain it to her properly because I myself did not understand what was going on and was very overwhelmed by the whole thing. And so, I mean, I think she kind of just like thought that he was a friend who was hanging out with us. And there were a few times that he slept over, and I don't think I handled that very well either. Like I asked her if it was okay if he slept over, and she said yes. And she really liked him. And so, you know, she was okay with it. But I think when she actually like, because at one point she got up in the middle of the night and came in, and I think the like sight of somebody else in our bed was very upsetting to her, and she became very upset, and she was like crying in the middle of the night, and I was feeling like a horrible parent because I don't know, she didn't really like often, she wasn't in a phase of waking up a lot in the night at that time, so I think I just like took it for granted that she would just sleep through the night and like it would be fine, and she'd wake up in the morning and he'd be there and whatever. But yeah, it was not a great situation. And yeah, I didn't feel like I handled that very well, but she was 3. So it was like, I don't know, I just like struggled knowing how to explain what was going on to her. And I truly didn't have an understanding myself. So,
right. I mean, how would you know? Like, how would you know until you're in it? Like how to handle it. You don't even know how you're feeling. So
yeah,
like you asked your 3-year-old daughter, and that's huge. That's such a big thing.
I don't know. Like, yeah, that's kind of how I roll as a parent. Like, I don't know. I give her a lot of like power.
I like it. I think that's great parenting.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, like I know it's a big deal for her too, but like I didn't actually handle it very well because I don't think she actually understood what the question meant because she's only 3.
Right.
So she was like, yeah, sure. You know, like we were having fun, and she was like, yeah, sleepover. You know, like why not? And then it was like, oh, you know. And I think I even said like, is it okay if he sleeps in my bed? Because we actually have like another bedroom that he could have slept in. And she was like, yeah, of course. You know. But yeah, then got really upset. And so since then, I mean, like, I haven't been dating very much recently at all. Like, it's been a while. So, now that she's older, like, you know, kids grow so quickly. So, like, even now I'm just like, oh, wow, if we, like, come out of this pandemic a little bit and I start dating again, it's going to be a whole different story because she's so much more aware and older now. And, like, also more aware of the fact that, just more in general aware of the fact that, like, I'm a person who could potentially have another partner. Like, she's kind of that, she wasn't aware of that at that.
Right.
This was like a year ago. So she was a year younger. And now she's more like she'll say things to me about like me. She notices that my sister has a partner and she understands that like I used to, but he's dead. And you know, kind of knows that like I could eventually have a different, like she's kind of piecing it together a little. Okay. So yeah. So anyways, I got off track, but yeah, I don't know. I think that like, again, kind of with the in-laws, like I would tell her when it was becoming more serious.
Yeah.
And I think I just like, now that she's older, I have to be a little bit more intentional about it. Like I think dating in general with a younger kid, I was like very much like, whatever, I'm just going to do this and do that. And like, who cares? But now that she's a little older, I think I might be a little more intentional in terms of like introducing her to people at a certain time when I feel like okay about it. And I think really just following your intuition is so key for all of this, because you know your kid best and you know your situation best, and like, does this feel like a safe situation that I want my kid to be a part of, you know? So I think I would really weigh heavily on my intuition, because again, there's like no roadmap for this, you know, there's no rule book.
Right. I mean, solo parenting is hard enough, and then your own grief and your child's grief and introducing another person into that mix, it's just, there is no roadmap.
Yeah, no.
I think you're doing great.
Muddling through.
Yeah.
As usual. Okay.
So,
how do you handle feeling judged by others for dating or having sex?
I feel like this has gotten better over time. And I think there's two groups. There's the friends and family in my inner circle of people that I regularly interact with. And then there's like everyone else that's just watching and judging from the sidelines because I'm a widow and my husband died tragically. And everyone wants to know what happens. Like everyone is just on the edge of their seat trying to figure out what happens.
Yeah.
Those people I no longer care about being judged by. And honestly, I feel like most of them aren't actually judging me. They're just watching. They're curious. Early on, I felt like I was judged by everyone, like for everything. But I know that for even your people that love you the most, dating, having sex, being in a relationship with somebody new can be difficult. So I feel like I'm learning it's okay to have those conversations and try and talk about it and have them see my perspective and why this is important. And I've had really positive experiences with people in my life not judging me and being happy for me. But I think at the end of the day, it's like even people you love might judge or might not understand. And if they haven't lived in your shoes and they haven't been through that experience, they can't fully understand. And you have to live your life. Like at some point, you have to just live your life, even if the people around you are judging you or not getting it. And it's up to you how much you want to try and explain and hold their hand through that process.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, how do you date without talking about your late partner all the time? My entire adulthood was spent with this person. I have very few stories that don't include them.
Yeah, I think from my experience, first of all, I think that's totally normal to talk about. I mean, of course, like this person said, like your stories include them. They were there. Right. Like, obviously, why would you omit things from your life just because they have your person in them? Like, I would say, I mean, I think for me, I'm like, that is a non-negotiable. Like, the other person has to be comfortable with me, like telling stories that include Brian or talking about Brian. Like, I think that is something that can actually be an amazing connecting thing in a new relationship, because there's a level of intimacy that's built when you're able to talk about things like that are uncomfortable, that I think can build a really great intimacy in new relationships in widowhood. I mean, I also think for me, naturally over time, like when I start dating a new person, I find that I want to talk about Brian a lot, almost just to like see if they're comfortable with it and like make sure that it's cool. But I find that over time, naturally, more different things come up in conversation, and it isn't like as needed to be so central as it is at the beginning for some reason, like almost like it's a test or something like that. Not intentionally, but like I'm seeing, like, are you a person who's comfortable with this? Because this is a part of my life. Yeah. But then over time, like, it becomes more normal to talk about things that are happening now or like plans for the future. And that shifts with time too, you know, and it's all a balance, I think.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I'm trying to think about it from the perspective of the other person. And, you know, it's the same thing with like divorce, with any relationship where it's like you don't want to be on a first date and like have them just solely be focused on their past relationship. So I personally think it's a little bit like that. Although I am like upfront and we'll talk about Brad. And I think if you can't handle that, like this isn't going to work out. But I think there is a balance of, because she asked about all the time is what they said, you know, wanting to talk about them all the time. And it's like, I do want to talk about Brad all the time, but I also think it's a test for me to talk about myself as an individual. Like, what are the things I love as a solo person? And it is a growth challenge for myself to figure out the things that I love and want to talk about, that I'm interested in, that someone would find interesting about myself, that don't involve being in a relationship. And that's important to me. And I need to be able to talk about Brad in any relationship I'm in. Like, I'm never going to just erase Brad and the stories. But I think cultivating a new relationship and dating for the first time, like, there is an opportunity to kind of rediscover yourself as this new person. And so I think maybe reframing it a little bit of, instead of like, oh my gosh, I don't have any stories that don't involve this person, which isn't actually true. It feels that way because you spent your whole life with this person, but what are the things you like to do? Like, you know, what does interest you as the individual? And so I think just trying to think about that maybe would be helpful going into it.
Love that. If you're dating a widow or widower, when is it okay to bring up or ask about your late partner? Are there boundaries there?
Ooh, I mean, I think it's always okay to bring up and ask. Like, we've talked about this a lot. My dog is like on this table moving things. I think that if you are curious, if I tell you I've lost my partner and you have questions, like, that's, the door has been open for you to ask, for you to bring it up. And I think if you're curious after that, if you have something you want to know, I'm always open to that conversation and want to know, even if it's an insecurity, even if it's a fear. I think communicating is always a good thing. I think it gets hard if it's constantly being brought up in a way of comparing or feeling overly insecure because of what I had with Brad, you know, and it's that line of, you're not curious because you want to get to know me. Like, I think, and like what I've been through and what my relationship was and what makes me so spectacular now, it's more of like, you're feeling threatened by it. And this is why you're constantly bringing up my past relationship.
I feel like I have very few boundaries in this area, personally.
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable. Like, yeah, the people who I've dated who have asked me more about Brian and who have talked to me more about my grief have been the ones who I have like felt a lot more strongly about. Yeah. And like, that to me, I mean, it's so hard to say because like I'm still earlier on in my grief, and especially like a lot of my dating happened like in the first year as opposed to the second year. Mm-hmm. So it was like pretty early on. But I just find that like with the one person who really like asked me more about Brian and who we talked like much more about our grief, it felt like a much more meaningful connection versus the ones who kind of like seem to have more of those boundaries or fears around what's okay to ask, what's not okay to ask. And I mean, and again, that could totally change over time. Like, I don't know. But at that time it was like, it just felt like the big elephant in the room that's not talked about.
Right. That's kind of how I feel, where it's like, I know you're thinking about, like, they're thinking and wondering something. I'd rather just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got it now. I've got it. We have too many questions. What do you do if you're dating someone who feels like you should let go of your late spouse?
This would be really challenging for me. I would say it's like a huge red flag personally. I mean, obviously it's like context specific. Yeah. Like you know, but the way that I take that is that this person is feeling threatened or jealous, and you know, I really feel like it's really important for widows to date somebody who is comfortable holding that space for them to have this forever connection with their partner, because it's like for us, I mean, just thinking of the grieving process aside from dating, from what I seem to be reading and hearing and feeling intuitively, like it is very healthy for a griever to develop these continual bonds and some sort of like ongoing connection and relationship with their person who is gone. Like that's a much healthier way, the newer research is showing, to process grief versus this old-fashioned idea of like closure or letting them go, right? So I think it's really important to be in a relationship with somebody who understands and can support that for our own grief process, and how important that is for like our well-being as people and as grievers.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that there is, at least for me, this time where it's like, I'm going to suddenly let go of Brad. And so I think whoever I'm with needs to understand that this isn't a timing issue. This is forever. And like you said, holding that space for that relationship and for that person is crucial if you want to be in a relationship with me. And maybe other people feel differently, but that's just my own experience.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's ever a situation where that would feel like, okay, the closure or you know, letting go is a very like extreme way of saying it. But I wonder if there would ever come a time when somebody would, dating me, for example, would be like, maybe you're like a little too caught up with Brian. Like, I don't know. Like, do you think that would ever be a thing that could potentially be like getting in the way of a new relationship? I don't really.
Probably. I mean, for some people, yeah, I'm sure. I know people have asked about, you know, if you have pictures all over the place, or like where is that balance of holding on and holding space for your late spouse and also creating space for your new partner.
Right.
And I think, you know, if it's somebody that you love and you see a life with in some capacity, it's like you want space. You obviously want them to feel comfortable. And I think it's different when we're talking about dating and casually dating. Like if someone's like, you got to let go of this, I'm like, well, I'm letting go of you.
Yeah.
But it's like, imagine like being in a relationship where it's like you see a future and you love this person and they're uncomfortable with X, Y, or Z. And it's not like the idea of holding space, but maybe it's some minor thing like photos or, you know, talking about it in some capacity. I don't know. Like, I think it's different for everyone. And I don't know where that line is for me personally, but I'm sure this is an issue that comes up regularly with people.
Yeah. And this may be a good time to include that I received a DM and I sent it to Dana a few weeks ago, and it was from a woman who was dating a widower, and she was not a widow, and she was saying that like she was uncomfortable with how much he was like still had pictures of his wife around, and he seemed to be always talking about her, and she was like, I don't feel comfortable in this relationship, or like, when do I know that I should leave, because he's obviously still in love with his partner. And like we were both just like, well, of course he's still in love with his partner. Like I think if you're going into a relationship with someone who's a widow or widower, like you have to just kind of know that and understand that and accept that and be okay with that and be okay. Like again with the duality thing of grief, it's like, as the person coming in, you kind of have to like understand that duality to a certain extent as well, and like be okay with that.
Right. And I remember that, and it was just like I felt so bad for her though too. And I think I said like it felt like she was just silently suffering. Like she cared so much for this person, and she was asking you, which was like such a huge step because she truly felt like she wanted to know. And even though we're like, yeah, of course, like he's in love with his late wife, it's also like I want her to be able to have that conversation, because she does not like, just if you're dating me and something makes you uncomfortable, like I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Like I want you to be able to talk to me and us come to some understanding, or at least give me the opportunity to explain this is why this is important and why I talk about this person, and here's how I can incorporate you into that. And, I don't know. I just think that dialogue is so important. And I think we can be hard sometimes because we're just like, fuck you. Like, you don't like, it's very easy for us. And I see it on all the message boards of like, the new person doesn't understand and we're so fast to just like shit all over them. And it's like, well, they're like in this new relationship and they're in love, and like there has to be space for her feelings too.
That's
and
true.
That.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for us to kind of overlook that and forget that.
Yeah. Especially earlier on.
Yeah. Well, and we just like, I think widows and widowers just want to defend each other. Like it's so hard that we're very quick to be like, no, you figure it out or get out, like move on. And it's like, it is more complicated than that.
It's true. It's true.
Wish it wasn't.
Yeah, I wish it was simple. Okay. Is it okay to want to date again just to feel desirable again?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I think you should let the person you're dating or having sex with or whatever with know you're not looking for a relationship. Like if you're only doing it to like feel sexy and feel good and to practice and to get out there, I think just being open with whoever is on the other receiving end is important.
Yeah. I definitely think that this was a big part of why I went on a date 4 months after Brian died. I think this was a huge part of it. Like looking back, I mean, as with everything, there's so many different pieces to it, right? Like it wasn't just that, but I think that was a piece of it. And just feeling like, yeah, when you go through like the hell of a death and the grief, and it's just like to go out and like have something to do where you get to like put a little bit of effort into your appearance and have somebody look at you like with desire as opposed to pity.
Yes. Oh God, what a good point. Yes.
Like that was something that I really found because I was just like, everybody was coming over and being like, here's some food. Are you okay?
I didn't even think about it from that perspective of like the idea of sitting across from someone who doesn't know your story and is like, oh, hey, sexy mama. Like,
or even like does know. Like, I'm thinking like that guy that I went on that first date with, like he did know Brian had died, but like he wasn't seeing me in the context of that. He was seeing me in the context of like, here's someone who I'm interested in dating. And this is her story.
Yeah.
But primarily he was like looking at me as someone that he potentially wanted to date. And like that felt like a really good identity to take on, even for just a short time in the midst of being like in grief central.
Yes.
Very much at that time.
I love that. I love that. Do you ever think or feel that you will never have any kind of relationship with a man again?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Is it, so when I read this question at first, I was like, I was only taking it as any kind of relationship. And then I'm like, well, is it specific to a man? And it kind of goes back to our other question that we already answered. But is your yes the relationship, the fear of never being in a relationship, or with a man, or both?
Both. So, like, yes. So, because I have dated, but I haven't actually been in I haven't been able to be like, yes, I want to be in a relationship with you. I definitely have this fear that there's just this like problem with me that I can like be sexual and I can date, but I can't actually commit and get into a relationship again. So I've definitely had that fear. And sometimes don't know if I will or if I won't. Like I sometimes truly am like, I don't know anymore. Yeah. Even though at first when Brian died, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to get into another relationship. Like it's going to be really hard. It's going to take a while, but it's going to happen. And I just like had this blind faith. And then for some weird reason, which is, I don't understand it, because I was also like devastated. But then, yeah, now I do, like, I feel like in this phase of grief I'm in right now, I'm very much like, okay, I've tried dating and like I've met some cool people, but I can't do it. So like, can I do it? Is sort of like my fear. And then in terms of like, yeah, specifically men, yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's very confusing. I don't know. I think as time passes though, I'm less triggered by men than I was at the beginning. Like, I feel like, yeah, that isn't as much of a thing now as it was at the start.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely felt that, and I don't currently feel that because I'm in a relationship, but I felt that a lot, that fear of never wanting or never being in a relationship. Like, I think that's very normal and common to feel and think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think pretty much every single widow who isn't in another relationship worries about that and thinks about that and is like, will I get together with anybody else? It feels impossible.
Yeah.
Did you and your late spouse talk about the idea of you dating again after he was gone?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last time. Brad and I had like one minor conversation about it after he was diagnosed, and it was kind of like, yeah, I expect one day, like, I want you to fall in love and be happy. And I don't struggle with the idea from Brad's perspective of what he would want. Like, I feel like he wants me to be happy and whatever that means. So we didn't have any in-depth conversations other than I feel supported by Brad in any decision I make in terms of relationships.
Yeah. We potentially, hopefully, still have quite a bit of life ahead of us, and we were like good partners to them. So why would they want us? We have good skills. Why would we not use
skills? Yeah. Put those skills to use. Someone's got to benefit. Oh God.
I really believe that. Like, I truly believe it. So I believe it for all of us, not just for me.
Yeah, I agree too. How do you keep from comparing your late partner to your new partner?
Well, I don't have a new partner. Maybe you should answer this one, Dana.
How would you keep from comparing? Because I don't know.
I mean, I think that, I mean, I don't know. I think that this would be really hard for me. I actually worry that this could potentially be an issue because I have a problem with comparisons in my life, like aside from grief. Like, I've always had a problem with comparisons where I'm like Brian used to always call me out on it. He's like, you're always comparing yourself to other people, or like, I don't know if it's like competitiveness or what. It's not really competitiveness, but I do kind of like use other people as to sort of like measure myself up against, which is not a part of my character that I particularly like. So anyways, comparisons is kind of something that I've struggled with my whole life. And so I do wonder if I would do that. But the thing I found with like, with my little dating experience that I've had with particularly one of them, I found that, yeah, there were like certain things that I was kind of comparing a little bit, but I found that it was cool because there were like things about him that Brian didn't have, or like, there's always going to be like things that are just different. And I think just trying really hard to think of it as like difference instead of constantly like measuring up every little thing, just like there's going to be certain things that are going to be harder. There's going to be certain things that might be easier. Like, as with any people melding your life together, there's going to be things that flow really well, and there's going to be things that require a little bit more work.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think that's with any relationship. And like the thing that I think is really important that I try to think a lot, and I think if and when I get into a relationship, I would really try to focus on this, is like, my relationship with Brian was not perfect. Like, I think in grief, there's like this tendency, because there's so much love, and you're just like, I do anything for one more second, and like all of the things that used to bother you, you're just like, I don't fucking care. Like, I couldn't care less about that shit. But I try to remember, like, no, when we were alive, like in bodies together, both healthy, trying to like get along, there were things that weren't always like 100% easy. And I think that's really important too, when you're kind of like getting into a new thing. It's like, yes, it's not perfect, and yes, things are hard, but like things were also hard with your other person. Things are always hard. Whenever you're like in a relationship with someone else, there's always going to be things that you have to like, just like work through. And
I think that's such a good point of, of not putting your past relationship up on a pedestal, which I think we all need to do.
100%. I do for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think like you mentioned this last time as well, I think also there can be things that you like certain main characteristics, values that were really important to you that you really had with your person that you also want to have in a new person too.
Yeah.
So there can be certain like really key important things in a person that carry through and carry over. But like you said last time, like, yeah, you can't be looking for a carbon copy.
Right. I think it's like any relationship, whether your partner has died or not, like any past relationship, it's learning and taking what you've learned in that one and how does that apply to the next one and what qualities you want to continue and that you value. And, you know, anyone can compare their past relationship. And so it's how do you focus on the one you have and appreciate the one that you did have in the past.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts on the fact that remarrying is more acceptable for men? Kids need mom, men are more sexual, etc.
I mean, I feel like everything is more acceptable for a man in our society, like literally everything. So I have spent zero time worrying about this because this is being a woman. It's always acceptable for men to do whatever. And it's like the widow thing in particular is we're like the sad widows. And then it's like a man loses his wife and he is a unicorn. He's like proven that he can be a good spouse and a good dad and all of this stuff. And it's very unfair, that narrative. But I really like, I know the value I have. Everything is more acceptable for a man. So I don't really care. Okay. I am a young widow with kids. How do you even meet someone? And she said, no dating apps. So outside of dating apps, how do you recommend a young widow mom meeting someone?
I mean, I think the same ways that I think this is the same thing. I remember being single like before I met Brian and being like, how does anyone meet anyone? You know, it's like
hard anyway.
Really hard anyway. Yeah, I think if you don't want to do dating apps, I mean, I've met people through like groups, so like joining groups that you're interested in, or like doing things that you're interested in. I feel like that's a good way to meet people, and then also just like through friends.
Yeah,
the guys I dated was through friends, and yeah, just kind of. I think also just like in general, the whole question of like meeting someone is, I think just like again like connecting to who you are and what you want and what fills you up, and kind of like following that will attract people to you who align with like who you are.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Like, how do I meet people? What do I do? I'm just at home all the time alone with my kids. It's like carve out some time for you maybe, and then that's kind of my advice.
Yeah, I also want to add, I read this once, and it's not specifically for widows with kids, but it's so tricky because the people that love us don't, like normally it's like your friends will set up other friends and not even think about it and be like, oh, I have this person. And I think when you're a widow, people are treading very lightly. They don't want to like overstep their boundaries. So I think if you're ready to date, if you're thinking about it, I think telling your friends like, hey, I'm interested in dating, do you know someone? Like kind of opens the door to allow them. Otherwise, I think they feel really uncomfortable because they want to respect like your grief process. So that would be my piece of advice for anyone, whether you have kids or not. But if you're not on the dating apps, like let people know you're open at least to dating or meeting somebody else, even if it's just casually or to test the waters. Like tell your people, let them do the work.
That's such a good point, Dana. Like as you were talking, I was like, I need to do that. Like I need to tell people.
Because these are the people that love you and they know you. So it's like, tell them, let them go out and find people.
Yeah, and meeting people through friends is the best because you have personal references. You kind of, I don't know. I just
none of that dating app like creepy, like oh my god, I'm meeting a stranger, because it's like you have mutual friends.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's kind of cool if somebody who like knows me and loves me is like you would like this person.
Yes,
like, that's really cool. So, so I should tell people.
You should do it.
Oh boy. How do you incorporate your late partner into your new relationship?
I feel like Brad and I had traditions that like I just really love and I carry on even without Brad. Like for Christmas Eve, his family always did fondue on Christmas Eve, like growing up. And so Brad and I, as like the new couple, like we would do Christmas Eve fondue, and even after he died, like I do it with my sister, and we always do fondue on Christmas Eve. So it's like there are things that are really important to me, that just these little traditions that I will incorporate the new person, be like, this is now my tradition, and I want you to be a part of it. Yeah. So I think it's just like these little things of your life together without it being like, this is all Brad and I, and there's no space for new, because obviously you want, you know, to have space for this new relationship. But I think sharing in some of these things that were important to you is, for me at least, how you can incorporate both of those together.
Yeah. This is all, everything you say is so like wise, and I can really tell you have so much more experience than me. I'm just like, that makes so much sense.
It's all the Brene Brown books. Just read Brene Brown.
I think this is like intuitively also why I decided that I needed to move. Like, I think that is actually the reason, is like, it does very much feel like in this home, this is off topic, but
that's okay.
That, you know, people are really like walking into my life with Brian.
Yeah.
It's very hard to not be like constantly talking. I don't know. I feel like this space really affects things versus like my home that is mine, and like really intentionally, yeah, carving out that space in your own life.
Yeah. That's like, you know, I never like dated anyone in my house, like in the loft that Brad and I lived in. I never brought a man home. I never had that experience. And it's hard enough in my own space, but at least it feels like it's mine, and there's pieces of Brad all around me in our life together. But that's a whole other mind fuck. We haven't really talked about that, of you were bringing somebody into the space you shared with your partner, like the life you built together.
Yeah. It is really weird. Yeah. I found that really hard.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, you know, I had the same furniture in the same bed and being like, oh my God, someone else is in our bed. But it was in a totally different house, in a totally different city, and still fucking weird.
Yeah.
I
think we're out of time now.
We are out of time, yeah.
But that's okay. There were so many questions. We weren't going to get to all of them.
I feel like we got through a lot.
We got through a lot. We did a lot.
All right. Yeah, I know. We should wrap this up. How do we end it?
Thanks for watching and listening.
Thanks for listening to us talk about sex and dating and all the uncomfortable things. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Because I think we're usually on the same page with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I'm just less experienced than you.
Yeah, well, an extra 2 years gives you a lot of extra experience.
Also courage. Oh,
that came in the last 2 years. That's when you stop giving fucks. That's what you have to look forward to. It's coming.